Director of Green Spring School, a school based in Lagos that caters for the education of children from 18 months to 18 years. An arm of our educational institution caters for children with special needs, while another provides a Montessori teacher training program. She has been involved with education for over 35 years and has within that period pioneered many initiatives. Her journey to educational leadership was inspired by her quest for excellence as a mother, needing the best for her child. Welcome to the Father's House, RICC.
Thank you.
Good to have you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me. Wow. I mean, just listening to my profile, I see that it's quite apt to have me, an educator, and a mother who was inspired, to go that path because of the love of a child. So once again, I say a big thank you, for having me. I thank God for the gift of life and health. And indeed, for the experience that COVID-19, this pandemic that has taken over the world, that has presented us with. For me, I just see this. I love to see things from a positive perspective, that it is a way in which God has decided to reset the world. God is resetting his world because really, I mean, we've sort of gone our own way and we think that we have all the powers. And now we can see that we are becoming more in tune, each and every one of us, we're becoming more in tune with humanity. And we know that we're all the same, even the so-called industrialized and Western nations, the ones that we try to run to and all of that, we see that everybody had to bow to this challenge. And so we're all the same, the whites, the blacks, the rich, or the poor, we're all the same. The same blood sort of runs through our veins. This is therefore one crisis that we cannot afford to waste. We must not waste it. It is here for a reason. On the home front, we are rediscovering ourselves. I never knew that I could stay indoors for so long without, going out. I thought I would just die or whatever, But now I've realized that, even within the home, there's so much more to discover. There's so much more rediscovering ourselves and even our children, our spouses. So we're coming face to face with connecting with our children and families and coming to the realization that for a long time, we had actually outsourced a lot of our responsibilities. This has given us an opportunity to reconnect and reorder our priorities. Now, when we want to think of God's role for mothers, so as we celebrate Mother's Day, first, I want to say Happy Mother's Day to our mothers, right? We acknowledge and appreciate the immense contributions of mothers to humanity. We are all familiar with the saying that the mothers are the light of the home. I think that's somewhere in Proverbs. And indeed they are. A home without a mother or a mother figure, I mean, it's a home that does not thrive. So as the light of the home, our mothers constantly guide us. They constantly pave the way, the pathway for us to follow. Mothers, they offer wisdom to help us make the right choices, the right decisions, in our lives. And so this is a day that has been set aside to celebrate them. But in aligning with this, we also need to recognize what's God's plan for mothers, for women. Why did he bother? I mean, he created Adam. Why did he bother to create a woman? And we're told that he created the woman as a helpmeet for the man. Most people say helpmate, but there's a difference between being a helpmate and being the helpmeet. A helpmate is a person who provides help, or is familiar with another person, while the helpmeet is a helpful partner, particularly a spouse. So God thought it fit to create a helpful partner for Adam. And she was designed to be his mirror opposite, possessing the other half of the qualities, responsibility, and attributes which he lacked. And so, I mean, whilst not wanting to go into, that, the translation of that helpmeet from the Greek word, suffice it to say that a biblical scholar, David Friedman, translated the word as help is Isa, the Greek word is Isa. This word is a combination of two root words, one meaning to rescue, to save, and the other meaning to be strong. And so the root of Ezer, that Ezer word, if you remember Ebenezer, which means help or salvation, is the same word that God used to describe to Adam who Eve was. She was intended to be she was not intended to be just his helper or his companion. Rather, she was intended to be his savior, his deliverer. And that is the role of women. Women are saviors to men by the fact that they give men life and nurture them towards the light of Christ. Without women, there will be no gateway into this world and no opportunity for progress or exaltation. And in addition, being willing to sacrifice their own lives to bring children into this world, women demonstrate the true meaning of what is referred to as charity, which is the highest form of love. From the very first breath a child takes, he or she has been the recipient of charity and unconditional love. This is a powerful gift that mother gives her child. And it is the love which first reminds the child of God's love and points the child towards Christ. So how can we then, as mothers, be that light and fulfill our God-given roles in our homes and be very involved with the education of our children? What is education anyway? Education is a process by which society deliberately transmits its accumulated knowledge, skills, and values from one generation to the next. And so education is fundamental to growth and development of the society. But of course, we also know that education is not limited to what is done behind the classroom walls. It's not limited to the 3 R's, arithmetic, reading, and writing. No, it's not. There's a whole lot about education that is informal. And this informal part of education is that part which deals with values, with character formation, and all of that. And for that informal part, age 0 to 6 is so critical. That is where, at the time when the child's mind is extremely absorbent, it's called a period of absorbent mind. And everything, the child soaks up everything that happens within the environment. It is a period when parental influence and involvement is critical in the life of a child. If you recall, I mean, mothers in the house, that, when a child is born, the doctors put the child on the chest of the mother for that connection. And from then, that love, that wells up within the mother is transmitted into the child. Now we know that children, yes, they have two main educators. They have their teachers, but primarily they have their mothers. The mothers are the prime educators until the child starts school, and they remain the major influence on their children's learning through school and through life. And a mother's training, a mother's interest, a mother's love never ends. And so it is so critical that mothers and parents, I would say, must note that they are role models, and that the children behave and they react and imitate their parents and their mothers, especially. Parents and mothers therefore play a very critical role, a very important role in encouraging, motivating their kids to learn. Good motherly care helps the child, to be well positioned and to become good lifelong learners. And so at home, even as we are all stuck at home at the moment, and we rediscovering that we are actually primarily responsible for the education of our children, we have to ensure that we establish a consistent structure and a routine for learning at home with the child. For example, we have to ensure that we schedule, a time dedicated to homework. Now that they're not in school, we have to ensure that if there's online teaching, that the child, gets up in the morning, knows that there's school. And so if it's 8 o'clock, if it's 9 o'clock, the child must be seated and ready to start, his or her studies. And we will give the necessary support. For younger children, surely we'll have to sit by the child to help the child through. And in cases where we don't even have online teaching or learning, you still have to structure the daily routine of the child. You have to ensure that the child knows, because structure is key. Structure is key in the development of the child. The child knows that between this time and this time, this is what I will be doing. And so the parent will be there to guide the child. And so if that is important to the parent, then it will definitely become a very important and integral part of the child. And remember, this is not something just for now, because once it is learned, as the child grows and even leaves the home, this culture, this value remains with the child. For some, I guess maybe not just for some, we set apart time. I remember when we were growing up that, our parents would read bedtime stories to us. I'm not so sure that most of us mothers have time for that anymore. But this is an opportunity for us to reset that. Now, this reminds me of the story of a Nigerian family that chose to homeschool their children. Of course, that takes determination to homeschool children and not send them to any kind of formal school. But the striking thing about this family is the influence of the mother in this process. You know what? This mother had been buying books that her children would read ever before she even got married, she would buy the books and keep them aside. Oh, that this is good for my child. And she'll put the books aside and she kept buying. It was a deliberate action. She knew what she wanted for the child and she worked towards it. It was deliberate. And really, and these children were not surprised, developed a love of reading because as they came into the world, I mean, they were sort of handed books, storybooks, books that are of interest and things like that. And so they became book lovers. And so the love for reading was developed. And today, these children are successes in their other endeavors, really. They've done so well. I mean, they're still in their late 20s and early 30s, but they've done so well because of the deliberate action of the parents, but in particular, the influence of the mother. In my own case, I actually got into education because I was looking for a school for my daughter. And as a mother or first-time mother, that's love that God has put in us for our offsprings. Sort of drove me, to look for the best schools. And at that time, the best schools I couldn't afford really. And at the end of the day, I sort of started reading literature about child upbringing. And I came across the Montessori method of child education. And that was how I decided that I was going to train as a Montessori teacher. And so I dropped all that I was doing. I was actually training to become a chartered accountant. I dropped that and decided to go for that training. I'm mentioning this because it takes the deliberate action of parents, of mothers in particular, to be connected with the education of their children. I'm not saying you should leave your job. I'm just saying that we need to be a bit more deliberate about it. We need to be very much interested in what becomes of our children, knowing fully well that the human beings that have been put in our care. And so we need to. Now, the COVID pandemic has definitely forced all of us to re-examine how we educate students. Schools are looking at alternative ways. Parents are confronted with the need to be involved in the education of their children, and that really, they cannot be removed from it. They must become a part of it. We have all learned, or we're learning, to become more creative with teaching and learning. And we're also coming face to face with the gaps, which in turn magnifies, the digital divide that we have. And so a lot of challenges are around that. But really, it's the new normal for us all. And so I would admonish all mothers that we should use this period and the lessons that we've learned to become well connected with our children, with the education of our children. Don't just outsource it to schools or to lesson teachers. Be a part of it. Be a part of it. And be able to hold discussions with your children. Get to know who they are. Because that's one other thing that, parents don't realize. These children, I see them as an endangered species because a lot of things that that were hidden, as it were, when we were growing up, they're all there. All you just need is to Google it and you get it, right? Meaning that there's no protection, there's no shield, there's no filter for these children. And so we have to be there readily engaging them in discussions, getting to know what they know, getting to interact with them. Their mental well-being is key, and guiding them along the way. We must not leave them. We cannot afford to. We cannot afford to. And in all of this, we've realized that the mother's role is key. Though, I mean, of course, the fathers too, they have a role to play, but the mothers have a key role to play. And I want to quote, a gentleman, a professor, because there's been a whole lot of research around all of these things. And Professor Ian Walker said, it seems the mother-daughter relationship is now the transmission mechanism for social mobility. Remember what I said about education earlier on, that really it's a way in which, knowledge is transmitted from generation to generation in the development of society. And now this gentleman says that the mother-daughter relationship is now the transmission mechanism for social mobility. It used to be said that the father was the breadwinner, and that would dictate household education decisions. If the father was richer, you could afford to stay on at school rather than go out to earn a living. That is clearly no longer the case. Researchers found that for every year a woman stayed in full-time education, the likelihood of her daughter also staying for an extra year increased by 20%. We may say we are not in this, category, but what this is pointing to us is that, a woman's involvement in education affects really the world, really. Hence the saying that if you educate a man, you educate an individual. But if you educate a woman, you educate a nation. When girls are educated, their countries become stronger and more prosperous. And we've seen the emergence of, very strong, women now, well, maybe the men are now becoming endangered species, but, in fact, in our school, we're making special effort to work with boys and make them, stronger and ready to take positions of leadership. So Mother's Day is an occasion, therefore, is a day that is celebrated in various parts of the world to honor women. It's to honor their contribution to humanity and acknowledge, of course, their maternal bonds and the role of mothers in society. We know that mothers are natural, that's another thing. And all that I've said actually is around the mother being a nurturer of a life, be it a boy or be it a girl. Because of our mother's love, we learn to love as well as we feel God's love through our mothers. And so mothers are very special. You are mothers, you are very special to God because human souls are entrusted in your care. And so you must know that you have a great influence over humanity and what humanity can become. We need to ensure that we play our role well. Now, on to mother's role as an educator. I just want to use this opportunity to think of our role beyond ourselves and consider how we, knowing fully well that we are the educators, yes, we are, that we can, and how we can be the change agents in our society. That is beyond our own immediate homes. That we understand as responsibility, that we are going to take on board to pay closer attention to our children and to our family. But in our society, It is very, very easy, and we do it all the time. We continue to point fingers at our leaders for all that they fail to do or to provide. Can we start thinking of how we can become influencers in the education space by actively adopting children of the less privileged and paying their way through school? That's a food for thought. Remember the words of the elder statesman, Obafemi Awolowo, that the children that we do not train will come to haunt us in the future. The rich and highly placed in business, public life, and government are running a dreadful risk in their callous neglect of the poor and downtrodden. I think we're now starting to experience the haunting from these children that we have neglected. And it will get worse if we do not stem the tide of decline through our intervention. In Lagos, we already have the menace of the area boys. And in the north, we have the menace of the Almajiris. And so I'm saying, can we just use this Mother's Day celebration to start a movement of intervention in public education by ensuring that the children that show up in school actually get an education? Do you know that there are schools in Lagos State that have over 1,000 students with only 9 teachers? Others with over 3,000 students with just 25 teachers. Do you think that learning is taking place in those schools in such a setting? Are we not preparing a setting for another set of area boys and girls, of course, to be unleashed on society? What sort of Nigeria will our own, in quotes, well brought up and well provided for children, what sort of Nigeria will they live in? It is scary to say the least. We all have to roll up our sleeves and think beyond ourselves and become actively involved. Can we start a form of vocational training center to get these area boys off the road and into gainful employment? We cannot leave this just to government, because when the problems start, it's not only the government that will, the so-called people in government that will suffer the consequences. A monthly contribution of maybe 10,000 naira will actually put 2 children through a public secondary. You may wonder, 10,000 naira, how far-reaching can this intervention go? And that reminds me, and that maybe, it cannot make a difference, and things are so bad, It reminds me of the story of a man that was walking down the beach. And as he walked along the beach, he would see starfish that had been washed ashore, and he would pick them up and throw them back into the sea. Because if they remain on shore, they were going to die. They risked death. And someone asked, why would you do that? Why would you do that? Because really, the beach is so long, and even as you walk past a stretch, starfishes are being, washed ashore, and there's nobody to pick them up. And even as he continued to pick the starfishes and throw them back in the waters, he said that the starfish that was saved will know that it had been rescued. The starfish that was saved. So also, the children that were able to rescue will know that their lives have been touched by, by somebody that cares for them. And so, I will implore you, just think about it. It's just a seed that I'm sowing, that this is a joint responsibility that we all have. We are mothers, we are educators, and we need to rise up and do something. Nelson Mandela said that education is the most powerful weapon that we can use to change the world. We need to change the world. We need to change Nigeria. And we can only do this through education. Malcolm X said, education is our passport to the future, but tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. Oprah Winfrey said, education is the key to unlocking the world, a passport to freedom. In conclusion, we just want to thank our mothers for all that they do, for preparing the children who are God's gifts to them, preparing them for life. From our mothers, we learn the lessons of courage, strength, and hope. Mothers bear a divine role, not only in our lives, but also, not only in our lives or in the lives of their children, but also in society and in the world. And I'd like to just share this poem with you. You know it, you know the poem already. And it captures the whole essence of our discussions. It's my mother, who sat and watched my infant head when sleeping on my cradled bed, and tears of sweet affection shed. My mother. When pain and sickness made me cry, who gazed upon my heavy eye and wept for fear that I should die? My mother. Who taught my infant lips to pray and love God's holy book and day and walk in wisdom's pleasant way? My mother. And can I ever cease to be affectionate and kind to thee? Who was so very kind to me? My mother. Ah, no, the thought I cannot bear. And if God please my life to spare, I hope I shall reward thy care, my mother. When thou art feeble, old and gray, my healthy arm shall be thy stay, and I will soothe thy pains away, my mother. Happy Mother's Day. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for the word. We really appreciate it. Just to let you know, also on Wednesday, 6 to 7, a panel of educationists and mothers will further discuss this so that we know that we have fully understood what you have shared with us, and we have digested it and deployed it. And I'm sure we will get back to you with testimonies and with feedback.
Amen.
Thank you so much. We will take a few questions. If you are online, please, you can post your questions and we will see if we are able to take a few just before we need to wrap up. But this is the time where we want to encourage you to give. We have a Naira account and we have the domiciliary account. The domiciliary account has become important because going online has involved certain softwares and certain monthly payments, so that we have to meet in dollars. So that's why that has now become important. We've always had it, but never really emphasized it. Back office, if you have the domiciliary account, please go ahead and do that. We also have our Railroad Foundation account. It's up screen now. We have our Railroad Foundation account for your welfare and community support. You want to support widows, you want to support the vulnerable, you want to support any community initiative that we have. You've heard Mrs. Koiki talk about sending, helping orphans. We have an orphanage in Ibadan that we support. You want to do vocational training. We've had to sponsor some plumbers, I think last year, and some of them are actively working as plumbers today. Some of them are even graduates who wanted to retool. So you can give to Rayboard Foundation. That is for empowerment programs. If you want to support the ministry, what we're doing, please use the account that you have up there. If you are able to send something to us in dollars, that will be fine. You can give a tithe, you can give an offering. The Lord bless you richly as you give. These are the times where it's more blessed to give than to receive comes to play. There is he that gives and yet increases, and there is he that withholds, but it tends to poverty. Poverty is not our portion. The giving that you do will go a long way in ensuring that we're able to meet the goals that God has set ahead of us. Thank you so much.